The Wager by Mr. David Grann, a tale of shipwreck, mutiny, and murder. Now, before I even get started on this, if you have recommendations for other stories like this, I love random stories in history that nobody knows about, incredible tales that have long been forgotten. So if you have any history books, nonfiction books like this that you can recommend, please do comment down below and let me know about those. So what is this about? Well, in the 1700s, there's always fighting between the British and the Spanish. Their ships are always getting into it together, trying to control territory and seek out treasure for themselves, new lands and territories for themselves. So in 1740, they get the squadron to get together. Britain does, and they're going to go sail down to South America, kind of break up what the Spanish are doing down there. And this book, it begins with the ship itself, where it came from. It talks about how they get the crew together, some of the captains that are involved, and then it goes on to the adventure, which starts out doing all right. They have they have to switch out captains on one ship in the squadron early on, but no big deal. And really, they get pretty far down towards the Horn of South America, and then that's when things start to get sideways. So I'm not going to spoil anything. I know it's an over 200-year-old story, but if you haven't heard it like me, then I don't want to spoil what happens. Just know that they do get shipwrecked, as with the title, Mutiny and Murder. Shipwrecked, of course, tensions get high. You get a faction splitting off from the main group, people trying to decide how they're going to survive. Do we try to hook up with our squadron, or do we try to get boats and sail back to England somehow? And yeah, all that fun stuff in between. The book itself, it's written really well. It's not always so much block text. There are journals that he can pull from to give you like a dialogue that happens on the island. So yeah, it goes along pretty quickly. It's not a slog to get through. I read it in 2 days. I started at night on one day and finished in the afternoon the next day. So it's a very quick read, very interesting. It does go over the course of several years because it goes back to England when they're trying to figure out, even after all this stuff, the government or the military still has to figure out, was everything done to save this ship? Did everybody on the crew act accordingly at the time that the ship was wrecked? So you get a lot of after stuff that's kind of interesting. But if you like these kind of stories of survival, fun on the high seas, then you're going to like this. It's really interesting. I do appreciate the author talks about how he actually, did he go? No, see, now I forgot. He went to the island, or there was somebody else researching it and they went to the island. So he's got pictures of the island. There's even a picture in here of an actual piece of the boat that still exists there on the island. So it's pretty crazy what happened there. It is very good, very entertaining. I won't say there's anything too far out or crazy that happens. It's just a shipwreck and how people survive it. But it is very interesting, especially this island where there's like no vegetation, no real animals to hunt, and the length of time some of them lasted. It's amazing they even did that. It's like I said, then some of them they try to get on boats, make their own boats or jerry-rigged old boats to try to go all the way back to England. How are they going to do that? It's pretty incredible. So, like I said, I'm not going to spoil anything. There's some good stuff that happens even at the end where you're reading and then the last line of a chapter comes up and you're like, oh, whoa. So there's some good stuff in here. Highly recommend it. Before you go, if you have not read it, there's also another good one called, I think it's The Mysterious Case of Rudolf Diesel, about Rudolf Diesel, the man who invented the diesel engine and his mysterious disappearance. So that's another book. I put it in the same category as this, just a random person or event in history that nobody knows about, but is super interesting. So if you haven't read this one, go read it. Go read that one about Rudolf Diesel. And we're going to talk spoilers. Or here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to kind of give the story piece by piece of what happens in this book. And then you can decide when you've heard enough and want to tune out and go read it. Or if you just want to sit along and go along with the whole story with me, we'll do that. So, like I said, it starts with the ship itself, which it said it was a trading ship from, I think, like the West Indies, or what's that old company? Is it the West India Shipping or Trading Company? And they had to not retrofit, but just remodel it for their purpose in this one. And then the crew, you'd think, hey, we're going on this trip. Who wants to come along? Nobody wants to come along. Man, I've read enough of these books that to know that like life on a ship and the mission you think you're going on or the goal you think you're going to achieve rarely works out that way. And so they had a lot of trouble getting guys because guys did not want to go on this trip. They had what was the term they used? Press gangs, where they would go around to like taverns or on the docks and look for people who look like sailors. They would look for like the tar stained fingertips and look. It's like, you, what ship? Yeah, come with us. And they would just basically kidnap people, and they would kidnap them, throw them on the ship or throw them somewhere by the dock, and of course people would escape and run away. So most of the crew, or a lot of it, didn't even want to be there. They actually had to hire like Royal Marine soldiers to come be on the ship and be part of the crew. So things weren't starting out well. First, the ship really isn't what they call it, a man of war. So if they ran into a Spanish galleon, it couldn't really do anything. And then the crew was a reluctant crew. So yeah, things are going well. They stop off at this little island on the northern part of Africa because one captain on another ship gets sick. My low constitution or something. Of course, people think he's just flaking out, but he has to leave. So then they have to shake up the captains on all the other ships. They go all the way down across the Atlantic with no problem. Get to Brazil. The problems start when they start going around the southern tip of South America, Cape Horn, where the seas and the winds get ridiculously rough. And this is when people start getting splashed overboard. There's a sickness, scurvy, starts popping up and spreading throughout. What else was going on? Just nothing was going right. Oh, the doctors. They had a doctor who was trying to heal people. He made this pill by himself and started giving it out to people. And then they think later generations think maybe, I forget what was in it. Like even traces of arsenic may have been in it. So he's basically poisoning everybody with these pills. They did later find out that this doctor was a quack, and then he shouldn't have been in a physician role at all. So yeah, that's nice. So they get around, and they get around the Horn, and that's when the ships start dropping off. I can't remember if it's like 5, 6, or maybe even 7 ships in the squadron. But even as they're going up the west coast of Chile, a couple ships start falling back. And they don't know if there's something wrong. There was speculation that maybe they just said, screw this, we're going back to England. We'll deal with the consequences. So then it's the Wager and this lead ship and a couple others. And what happened? I forget exactly what happened to the Wager. But still, the ship is getting busted up. It's leaking through the seams. The crew is sick. The problems with the food supply. So things are not going well. I think they come up one time and they see land and they try to steer away from it, quite can't get away. They kind of do a U-turn and then end up on these rocks, crashed onto this little island, this mountain island. And that's where the fun begins. From the start, they even talked about, like, as they're getting onto the island, people are already starting to go crazy. So this isn't a story where it's a big, healthy crew and we're only 2 weeks out and, oh no, we crashed and have to survive. These are castaways who are already worn out, sick, emaciated. Some are starving. And it's like, now try to survive. And that's why I said it's amazing some of them survived as long as they did. Because a lot of them were dying. You get out onto the island, they kind of split off. There's a small group that kind of splits away from them. They're like, listen, Captain, this is your fault. We don't want anything to do with you. We're off on our own. And so they actually build like a little village. People get their own little huts. You know, the same kind of groups and cliques that were on the ship. They kind of build like little shelters together. And they actually called it a village with like a dry path that goes in between and like a road. And so then as time goes by, as supplies get low, they are able to grab a lot of supplies off the ship. So that's able to sustain them for a little bit. And, you know, meat, cured meat, or whatever else, flour, whatever else they can scavenge off the boats. So that lasts them a while. And then later they get help from a local tribe, or the natives, and let me see what their name was. Well, the Coesker. These people who apparently basically all but live in their boats and kind of go up and down the shores. They kind of stop somewhere, gather a bunch of food, and then they move on. Shore nomads. But these people find them, and they're a little wary of them at first, but eventually they bring them even like sheep. They go off somewhere and bring them sheep. They bring them all kinds of food and sustenance from the ocean. But then, of course, the white guys drinking, and they start hitting on the native women and getting rowdy. And then the natives, they wake up one day and the natives are just gone. And like, well, you scared them away, you idiots. And then we start getting into them stealing from each other. The captain at one point, I said there's going to be spoilers coming up. At one point, he's kind of getting into it with this guy, and then he hears an argument between this guy and another guy, and he comes out of his hut and boom, shoots him right in the side of the face. And that's when sentiment really starts turning towards the captain, like, yo, there was no reason for him to do that. That was way overboard. So that's when they start thinking, okay, maybe another group starts coming around. It's like, we should get away from the captain. We do our own thing. They come up with this plan to get like 3 boats made to sail off together, but there isn't quite enough room. And they end up leaving the captain along with his closest guys, like 10 of them, on the island while three boats go sailing off. Now, one boat has this guy in there, kind of feels bad for the captain, and he says, hey, we need to go back and get some of this from the camp. Can we go back and we'll come right back? And they're like, yeah, sure, go. He goes back, and then he ends up siding with the captain. So then from here, it splits into different stories. We have this first group of boaters who go back down. They don't go all the way around the Horn, but they're going to cut through the strait, all the little island chain there. And along the way, trouble. It's not a fun trip. Eventually, they make it up to Brazil. And then eventually they make their way back to England. Of course, they think everybody else is dead. So that's when one guy writes this big book or from his journal entries. They try to court-martial him and stuff, but they can't really figure out what's been going on. So nothing really happens. Until years later, the captain and the guy who turned back in his boat, they show up in England years later. And you're just like, how did you guys survive? In 3 years, I think it was like 3 years after we had gotten back. Turns out this captain, I think he got picked up by locals again. And they took him up to the coast, and then he became a prisoner of the Spanish. And so he was actually in a prison for at least a year, I believe, because there's this war going on, something about a guy's ear. So they're actually prisoners. Eventually, they say, okay, you don't have to be in prison, but you can't leave the city. You're allowed to go out, but you're still prisoners of war, but you have more freedom. And then eventually after that, they say, okay, there's nothing really going on with the war, and the Spanish let them go back to England. So 3 years later, can you imagine that? You're that guy who basically, don't know if I can blame him fully for the mutiny, but he was kind of the leader once the mutiny started. Getting back to England, everybody, what happened to the captain? What happened, captain? You have to be so careful, the politics of it and the words you use about what happened, that you did all you can do, that you weren't a mutineer. And then the captain shows up along with another guy who you were close to. And now they can tell their story. I can't imagine, because then they start court-martialing people and rounding them up. It's like, you were on the ship, you were on the ship, you were on the ship. Everybody come here. We're gonna do this right now. And you're like, oh man, thought you were free. And then the trial, which it's kind of interesting because everybody's thinking, crap, we're gonna be hanged for mutiny. We're gonna be hanged for not doing whatever we could to save the ship, save others. We're screwed. But then it turns out, and so it seems, the government and the military, that everything that happened with this ship would have been such an embarrassment to the military and to the company. The Britons are supposed to be the best of the best, and if they're officers and soldiers and they're sailors, if they aren't the best of the best and they have you know, they're unethical or immoral, then how can we say that we deserve to, rule over other people? So they think maybe we should just sweep this all under the rug. In the trial, they only focus on whether the ship was able to be saved. They only asked, did the captain do everything? Everybody who was there, even the guys who had written books in the years past talking about the bad stuff the captain did and what happened on the island, none of that came up. They only asked, did you notice the captain do anything wrong when trying to save the ship? Did he do everything in his power to try to save the ship? Do you think he did not follow the rules of the sea or the standard operating procedures to save the ship? And everybody say, no, captain was fine. No, captain was fine. Captain, perfect, 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 perfect. And they said, all right, nothing to see here. It was an accident. And everybody's like, nothing about the mutiny or the murder. The captain shot the guy in the face. Nothing. All to just keep it out of the limelight, sweep it under the rug. It never happened. There's no black mark on our record as the Royal Navy or whatever they were a part of. Whew! So it was an awesome book. If you've read it, please let me know what you think down below. Like I said, please do give me more recommendations about awesome tales of history. I loved it. I love that one about Rudolph Diesel. I don't even know if I have more on my list. I need to just go online and just say more like this, because I love it. It's super interesting. So let me know down below what you thought about this book, what other books I should read that are like it, and I will see you next time.